Mr. Young. You like my intro music? I have my my fun little box here. Eric Young, flipper, ground up builder, general contractor, agent, real estate pro. How you doing, man?
Doing great. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, nice to have you on board.
Yeah.
So tell me your story, dude. How did you get started in real estate and when?
So I was a superintendent for a commercial construction company here in the Denver area, and I on the side would flip houses. So I didn't have a real estate license. I just needed more money. I I bought a house right in 2007, 2008 somewhere, and then the market turned right, and I was upside down in my house, and I was in a neighborhood I didn't want to be in, and I needed to make more money to get out of that house so that my wife and I could raise our new child in a better neighborhood. So
Okay.
I started flipping houses on the side, used some guys from Pinkard to help me with doing the work on nights and weekends.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me quite a while. I want to say probably 6-7 years of that before I finally figured out that it cost me a lot of money to keep my day job, that I was making so much more. It was not a side hustle anymore. It was that my job was in the way and I could make a lot more money if we just quit and started flipping houses full time. So
that's the way to do it, right? Where people lose it is they quit their job and then they're going to go start their company. That's about as risky as it gets, right?
Yes.
Keep your day job, in my humble opinion. And that day job, that W-2 lenders love that sweet W-2 income, right? It's far easier to lend somebody money if they've got a job.
Yes, it is.
Okay. So when did you start this?
So it was about 2016 that I started doing it full time. So there from 2008 to 2016 on the side, and then 2016 to today, full time.
Okay. So you've been at it a while, right?
Yes.
A while. How many deals do you generally crank through a year? And when I say deals, mostly what you do is flipping and ground up, right? Those two.
So very little ground up. I have done some ground up, and it's more of what my background was from Pinker Construction, but the flips are just way less headaches, way quicker. You can do 4 or 5 flips with about the same effort as one ground up and make more money with less risk. So the flips have been the main thing. I only know this because of how I do my accounting, but I'm on my 209th deal since 2016. So whatever that, I don't know, probably 25-ish a year, something like that. I don't know, 209 divided by 8 years, whatever that comes to.
209, and you don't have any gray hairs like me? Like what?
It's right here. Okay. It's starting to come in on my beard. But yeah.
209, man. So you've been around the block. All right. So plenty of people. So I'm obviously a lender. I lend private money. I lend agency debt. A lot of new flippers reach out to me, and one of my standard questions is, how many times have you done this? And who's the general contractor you're using? And one of the most common answers is, I'm not using a GC. And I always pucker up a bit when somebody's not using a GC. I pucker up, thinking, and not to knock these new flippers, full disclosure, I've done stuff without using a GC, and I've paid the price, right? I've been the general contractor and I've paid the price, and that's for another discussion. Let me ask you this: to GC or not to GC, why would somebody go get their general contracting license? It's a lot of work. Why would you even do that?
Well, I have a commercial construction GC license in Denver, so like anything up to 6 stories. Mm-hmm. And I did the majority of that work while I still was a superintendent for Pinkard Construction, because they wanted multiple people in the organization to have the supervisor status card, because you don't have to, you can be a licensed GC and not know what you're doing if you hire somebody that knows what they're doing. And so for a lot of these a lot of bigger GC companies will have several employees that have their supervisor certificate. So I already had done the hard part before I even got into this. So for me, there was no question of to GC or not to GC. Like that was what I brought to the table. That was already my skill set coming into it.
I mean, that is a huge skill set, because you do want to pull permits, right? You do want to do this right. And when you cut these corners, the people that I've seen get in trouble are the people that have cut too many corners, right? And when I say in trouble, I mean, maybe they get work done, they don't pull permits, it doesn't work. The electrician goes and crawls into a bottle somewhere. Now you've got electrical that doesn't work. Now you've got to get another electrician to come in and fix it. And that electrician goes, this is done wrong. This is dangerous. This is going to burn the place down. I'm going to have to redo this. And oh, by the way, I'm going to actually pull permits and we're going to do it right. And so the person that's guilty of that is me, right? I did this many, many years ago. And thank God that electrician actually screwed me. It forced me to do it right. Right. And I was tempted. I was trying to cut corners. I was tempted to cut corners and I did. And I got punished for it. And I'm so glad because that's a safety hazard. I mean, you do stuff like this wrong and somebody dies, a house catches on fire. There's plenty of liability. Right. I mean, I'm kind of lecturing. I'm preaching to the choir here. But yeah, what do you think?
I think you'd be crazy to have somebody do electric work of all trades too. Electric work that's not a licensed electrician. But the other side of that coin is the first person. So let's say you buy a house and the basement was finished so like say it's a house built in 1970 and the basement got finished in 1980 and it was a homeowner that did it and they didn't pull permits and it was in the city of Denver. All right, so now you buy the house and you want to, do some things that require permits. The first person to do the right thing is the first person that gets screwed for all of the stuff that was done the wrong way beforehand, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that would be one of the times where it might be prudent to not pull a permit for interior work. Say you were going to move a wall and you knew what you were doing and you're licensed GC and you do everything per code, say on the main floor, but the whole basement was finished back in 1980 by somebody else. So now if you pull a permit, the inspector comes in to look at your wall that you moved and they see that the basement is finished, but public record shows it's not. Now you're ripping all the drywall down, you're insulating all the walls on your basement that you didn't do any work on. You were going to paint and carpet your basement, but now you're ripping the entire basement out. You're rewiring the whole basement. You're pretty much you're moving backwards. To square one.
Yeah.
So I think that's the only situation where you should make a real informed decision about how you want to tackle that, right? You either need to buy it at the right price, that you're going into it fully expecting to gut that basement, and that's part of your game plan, or you need to go into it knowing you're going to make that completely safe and have a licensed electrician go through everything in the basement. You're going to bring everything to code up to a reasonable amount of work without maybe ripping all the drywall out and re-insulating your whole basement.
Yeah.
So that's the one caveat where maybe you think twice about pulling a permit.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. In the example I was talking about, I mean, that cost me double essentially. And I had a licensed electrician, but he didn't pull permits. And then he bounced which happens, right? Which is another reason I think you would want a GC if you're a flipper, because, or at least to employ one, right? Because if I'm a guy who does, if I'm a hobbyist and I do one deal a year, right? And you do 25, right? You've got your sub pool. I've got my sub pool, if you could even call it that.
Right. Yeah.
And who are they going to call back? Right? Who are they going to show loyalty? I'm talking about the subs now, the electrical, the plumbing, the drywall, the painters, on and on and on. They don't care about me. They want to make sure you're happy because you're the guy who's going to send them to the next job and the next job and the next job. They can take one look at me and go, oh, he's a standard homeowner. He's redoing his kitchen once. Like I'm last on their list to call back. And I could go on and on, but I'll throw a few more things of the reasons I like hiring real general contractors. They've been around the block enough. They're putting their license on the line when they do something, right? And so safety matters, and the quality of the work matters, and the fact that they've vetted those subs, right? I mean, they've gone through a dozen subs and they know, hey, I'm going to stay away from this guy because every other year he ends up in the bottle in Mexico, and this guy just is steady as a rock, right? And you do that with a few dozen subs, and now you got yourself a legit pool. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, it's all about relationships. It's 1,000% just relationships. An electrician will give a guy off of Angie's list one price, and then the price that same electrician's going to give me, who's been working with him for 15 years straight and is known from, when things get slow, he knows I'm still going to be there with him. We're going to work together over and over and over. My price is probably half of what the person off the street's going to pay.
Yeah.
But it's all about trust and relationships.
Right. I mean, that's life, right? But it's clearly articulated in real estate, right? From lenders to GCs to agents, buyers, sellers, you name it. The only way you make it is through these quality relationships. When I used to bring on new loan officers, I would tell them, hey, if you wanted to have a career in real estate, just do this one thing. Help as many people as you can. Do anything in real estate. Forget about the pay. Take 2 years of your life. Help anybody do anything in real estate. Refer them painters. Help them clean up their garage before a sale. Do loans, be an agent, you name it, work at title. Just help as many people as you can for 2 years. Forget about the pay. And once you've done that, you'll have built up enough goodwill that will carry you for the rest of your life as a professional in any one of the kind of key positions in real estate, right? Lender, agent, general contractor, wholesaler, even title. You build up that goodwill, and it goes a long way. And I didn't see many people actually take my advice. I took that approach, and I've been able to do just fine with real estate. So, okay. I mean, the consensus is if you can do it, hire a GC. And if you watch out for the extra pulling permits and having to fix somebody's, mistake from 20, 30 years ago. I think that's super important. All right. I want to change the subject because you've been at this a while. You've done a lot of cool stuff from commercial general contracting to fixing and flipping. And then you've done some ground up, but you also built a class, right? Talking about bringing new people into real estate. You built a class. Tell me about the class. Tell me what did you build? How did it go?
So I wanted to scale up Denver property flip, but I realized that to fix and flip houses in other cities was not going to be practical and not really something I wanted to get into because of what we already have talked about. It's a relationship game, and I have all of my relationships here in the Denver area. So I wouldn't want to go start flipping houses in, say, Chicago or Dallas, Texas, or I'd be starting from scratch. So that's not how I wanted to scale. So I thought the best way to scale would be to teach other people to copy my business model through a course I put together. It was a membership group. So we had weekly meetings, and there was a course they go through and try to show them how to duplicate exactly what I'm doing, but in their local market.
Mm-hmm.
And
how did it go?
It started with the name Self-Made Flipper, and I failed at it and when I say fail, I mean, it made some money, but not anywhere near the money that it would take to be worth the time and effort. It was just person after person that would say they want to learn how to do what I'm doing. And then when I would teach them how to do what I'm doing, it would always turn into like do it for me, or you know, let's sit down and spend all of your time going through every detail of my new deal. It was just a huge time suck and pulling me into all of the stress of what they're doing, and it just wasn't worth what anywhere from I think I started off selling a course for 299, and then the group ended up, it was higher ticket like 2500 for a little while. Even at 10,000 it wouldn't have been worth it per person, just from the sheer amount of handholding that was required. And maybe that's just because I'm not a good enough teacher to get them to go off on their own. I don't know. I tried to bring in a partner, and we rebranded it as Broker Vester. And the partner that I brought in helped take some of that workload to help, help people with the whole front end of it, the sales cycle. And I focused more on the GC side. And it still was just not a good business model. So,
Yeah, I think there's,
mm,
I didn't take the class, so I can't comment specifically on your
yeah,
class, but I think there's a reason that the Rod Cleefs of the world charge $20,000, $30,000 a
yeah,
year for
yeah,
their class, right? Um, there it is right there. Like
yeah,
a lot of these big names that everybody knows, I mean, a cheap membership would be 10,000 a year, right? Let
right.
alone, so doing it for 300 bucks and saying, "Hey, follow these 10 steps," and they get to step 2 and they go, "Well, what about this step?" And you go, "Well, it's written right there. Do step 2." I don't know. Can you show me how to do it's step 2. Just do that step,
Yeah.
step right there.
Right,
Um,
right.
so it's not a surprise, and I think a lot of people in real estate who have, ground out a living, right? This isn't as passive as people pretend it is. It's real work, right? Obviously, general contracting is real work. Um, Being an agent is real work. Being a lender is real work, and it's very, very common to bring on new people and those new people flake out. That is, very, very common. I was even talking to Lon Welsh, who we both know, who's a kind of a legend in Colorado. He built Your Castle Real Estate. He built Ironton Capital. And I said, Lon, all these people you've affected, you've taught all these classes. What percentage of people listen to you? Knowing what I've known and the people I've brought on board, I'm like, are you batting 1%? 1% listened to you and did what you told them to do? And he said, oh, that'd be optimistic at the 1%. But that's a guy who gave
Yeah.
classes and had a brokerage that gave weekly classes. And I was in some of those classes. In fact, I got my start by taking one of those classes. I took a class by Charles Roberts. I don't know, well over a decade ago. I'd already done some real estate deals because I started in the early 2000s, but I took one of his investing classes and I'm going, okay, this makes sense. It was a single family rental house and class. And I'm like, I really need more money than that. So what if I did this on an 8, 12, 16 unit? And so I just took everything he did on a single family model. And I didn't know what a syndication was. I didn't know what a fund was. I just knew I like that number, but I'd like it way more if it was 8 times that. So 10 years, or I don't know, however many years ago, I did my first syndication. I bought an eightplex, and I had no money. I didn't have credit. Nobody would lend me money. I didn't have income. I was transitioning careers, and it worked. And then I did it again and again and again and again. And I'm like, this is amazing. I'm so glad I took this one class and listened to them. And then when I brought this up to those guys, they're like, oh yeah, you're part of that very, very slim group that actually listened to us. And it was shocking when I first heard it. But now that I've been at this,
Yeah.
professionally for well over a decade, I get it. Like most people don't listen. They want you to do it for
Well,
them. Um, so
well,
your story is not unique, unfortunately.
and I would feel responsible for the other person too. Like, they gave me money to help them teach this, and I think part of that was just I own everything I do, and I felt like I owned their like their results too. So it's just a mismatch of personality type and how I'm driven to teaching people. So
Yep.
it's much better to just just stay in my lane and keep flipping houses here in Denver on as many as I can do here in the Denver area. Work with a bunch of people that I like, that work hard, and um, just stay in that lane instead of trying to bring in new people and trying to help other people get motivated or do something.
Yeah, I mean, you're not a rah-rah guy. You're a results guy who just gets stuff
Yeah.
done. And
Yes.
no, I get it. I agree. Hey, and don't knock yourself for trying other stuff, right? You got to
Yeah.
try other stuff and
Yeah.
fail fast, right?
Well,
Fail
and it was
fast.
helpful too, because it forced me to systematize everything I was doing to a way. I already had systems, but this was put it in a box that somebody has no idea about real estate can try to duplicate. And so just that process of trying to do the course and then failing at the course overall was really helpful for what I'm doing here. And everything's way more systematized on every flip. It's just same thing over and over and over.
Yeah, I like that. My
Yeah.
my dad was a civil engineer and construction consultant, developer, and he was often the owner rep. So he was a fee developer. So somebody would say, "Hey, I need a building. You build a building." The bank won't let me build a building myself because I don't know anything. So they brought in my dad, and he would build them the building. And he called it slugging rats. Right? It's just this never-ending stream of these little tasks. It's
Mm.
not that complicated. It's just
Right.
this huge thing of little tasks. And he would just call it slugging rats. Slug, 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 slug. And he had the same deal. This funnel of systems that because I worked for him for a little bit. And yeah, like I said, none of it was complicated, right? I mean, I studied calculus and I thought I was yeah, I've never used calculus in the real world, but I passed it. So anyway, that's the process of most things in life is the slugging rats process, right?
Mm.
Step by step by step. All right, speaking of slugging rats, you got yourself a hoarder house.
Yes.
I'm lending you some money to flip a hoarder house. Let's talk about this hoarder house. How do you find these? Let's start there. How'd you find it? How's your deal flow come in? You're
Yeah.
doing 209 deals. You're doing 25 a year. How are you getting your deals?
So I have Facebook ads and Google ads that are aimed at motivated home sellers.
Okay.
And then I have two different companies. One's Denver Property Team, which is a real estate brokerage. And I have a handful of agents in that brokerage. I keep it real tight. So I don't bring in any other agents. It's just the same three guys that I've been given leads to for quite a long time now. And
Mhm.
so I bring in the leads. They go to one of the agents in my brokerage. The agent shows up and runs the numbers on the house, like looks at it several different ways and says, if you're going to sell your house as is, you'll walk away with about this much. If you let us fix it up and then sell it for you, pretty much we flip the house for you, which we call a fix and list deal. Then they make more money most of the time, not always, but we'll run the numbers and show them. It's like, or if you just want to have it off your hands, we'll buy it cash for X amount, and you take the cash and walk away. And because my ads are aimed at motivated house sellers, even though we show up and show them how they can make a lot more money not selling their house to us for cash and walk them through it, we pull back the curtain and show them the comps and the whole exactly what we're going to do if we buy it for cash. Still a big portion of those people choose to take our cash out offer just because that's what they were looking for when they hit my ad, because I
Mhm.
set them up that way. Um, so it's kind of the two companies work together: Denver Property Flip, which is the licensed GC and investor, and Denver Property Team, which is the brokerage.
I
Yeah.
love this model because I think it's the most ethical model, right? There's no
Yes.
you're
Yes.
like, "Hey, you could do this. This is what we're gonna do," right?
Yes.
We could just buy it cash right now. We could list it for you, or we could do all the work for you, or. So
Yeah.
those three options I think is incredibly ethical. It gives people a real look on what it's all about. Um, I take
Yeah.
I forget what book I read. Maybe it was a Ray Dalio book. It was just radical truth, radical transparency. It's just a good way to live, right? Because
Yes.
you're never thinking, oh, what's the lie I told this guy? Or, it's just those people who go through this game lying. It's just got to be a horrible way of existing. So anyway, I love this. So,
Yeah.
okay, you do your Facebook ads, you do your Google ads, you land this hoarder house, and I've seen pictures of it. It's a hoarder house.
Yeah.
So you got it. So what do you, so let's start. What do you think it's worth as it sits?
See, I look at my board. I've got like 15 jobs going right now. So let's see. So this one, we're buying it at 270. Let me open my spreadsheet on this one. So
15 jobs at a time. That's a
yes.
that's somebody who's doing it.
Yeah, which is not hasn't been typical lately that we have that many going at one time, but it's everyone's ready to sell right now. um Yates. So I think that it's worth, as is on the MLS, we did absolutely nothing to it, 300,000.
Hmm.
And I think being very conservative, 480 fixed up. But that number is 480 and not 520 because of the timing of when we're going to buy this and fix it up and hit the market. I think we're going to be on the market in June, maybe late May. So that 520 number is completely on the table, and we might get there, but I didn't want to count on it because we're in an election year, and I'm not exactly sure when things are going to start to grind to a halt. But I know it's coming, and it's later this year at some point, and I might be safe in May, June, or I might not. And I don't want to sit on this thing all the way until the election's over in January, as people stop buying and selling when you get into that election cycle. Uh, so I'm counting on having to undercut the price to 480 to move it fast because of
Yeah.
that dynamic.
Yeah, I like that approach. When you get in there, you're obviously clearing it out. You know, you're going to redo everything. Are you going to add square footage?
No, no.
Okay.
But what we're going to do is all the houses in the neighborhood that are that square footage are 3-bed. Uh, it's a 3-bed, 1-bath. There's plenty of comps that are 3-bed, 1-bath at 520.
Mhm.
This house, the way it sits, is a 2-bed, 1-bath with an addition off the back where it's just a second living room, and it's a really easy, like, put one wall in, and well, maybe two, technically counting the closet.
Okay.
We're gonna put 2 walls up, and we're gonna have a 3rd bedroom that lays out nicely too, that feels like it was supposed to be that way, that flows well.
Right. Doesn't cramp everything.
It doesn't cramp everything. Yeah, it was teed up that way. It should have always just been a 3rd bedroom, but they
Yep.
they didn't put it in.
I
So,
mean, so you're going from a 2-1 to a 3-1. That's
mhm,
huge, right? And you've got
yeah,
legitimate comps that are easy to find, right? And so as a lender, I look at this and I go, okay, his acquisition cost is good. It's a 2-1. You know, I'm not the biggest fan of 2-1s, but can it be a 3-1? Oh yeah, it can be a 3-1. Okay.
yeah,
And something like this, I don't even require an appraisal. It's essentially a no-brainer. And I don't like to say no-brainer, but it is we'll call it a layup. Is that fair?
yeah,
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 it's a layup.
yeah,
Um, Now you don't know what you're gonna run into in a hoarder house because you've got stacks of stuff and you've got like hallways in big rooms, right? Uh,
right.
when you're doing a hoarder house, what are the assumptions, worst case scenario assumptions that you're gonna find behind those bags of stuff?
Yeah, so I like these houses the best. In my opinion, they're the safest. It's exactly the opposite, I think, of what most people would walk into a house like that and they're scared of it. But I walk into a house like that, I'm like, this is incredible because I'm assuming that everything needs fixed. We're gonna have to rewire this thing. We're gonna have to redo all of the plumbing. There's so much I can't see that I'm just gonna assume the absolute worst case scenario. Like, so this is like a 900 square foot house, 950, somewhere in that range, and we have $115,000 to renovate with 1 bathroom and a little kitchen, right? And $115,000 to spend on this little house. That house, when it's done, I'm going to have new siding, new roofing, brand new kitchen, brand new bathroom, new plumbing, new electric outlets. They'll actually be grounded, new panel, and new sewer line. It's going to be so easy to sell when I'm done compared to any other flip, that It's the safest route you could possibly go.
Yeah, I'd agree,
Oh,
right? So
yeah.
what I would assume is behind all those bags of stuff is everything, right?
Yes.
Everything.
Right.
Flooring, electrical,
Oh, yeah.
plumbing,
Yeah.
drywall, and so
Yes.
when you're banking on replacing everything, well, that's a real number that you can feel comfortable with, right? If you're
Yeah.
banking if you're doing a deal and you hit a snag where, I don't know, I mean, let's just say you incur a $30,000 mistake, right? And
Mhm.
that could be a sewer line that has to go all the way into the street, right?
Right.
Or you name it, right? But when you're assuming everything,
Yeah.
doesn't that make it easier?
It's great. I mean, it's harder in that it takes longer and there's more work to manage, but from a risk reward standpoint, it's way less risky than an easy cosmetic flip, because the easy cosmetic flip had a $15,000 budget. That one little thing you miss, and
That's
you're
right.
yeah, you're
That's right.
done.
That $15,000 budget, you find a crack in the sewer line, you find
Mhm.
a support beam that's broken, you find a leak behind a wall, you crack open that wall, you see God knows what you see, and then your $15,000 budget goes to $45,000 budget, and you thought you're going to make 30 grand on the deal, and now you're making 15. Something worse happens, now you're making 10. Now you're getting grumpy, right?
Yeah,
So now you're doing
yeah,
this deal and you're grumpy.
right.
And just those margins compress and compress. So no, I agree. I'd like to see these also. And as a lender, so I've done these, right? I've done these with apartment buildings, with fourplexes where we've added bedrooms, we've added egress windows, we've made them safe. And so when I see stuff like this, I like it. Um, if you're an investor, you would prefer to be comfortable with the investment, to understand the investment, not trusting that some guy understands the investment.
Mhm.
Um, so as a private lender, I really like seeing stuff that I get, right? And in fact, I don't lend on something I don't get, right? And I understand essentially kind of two things. I understand, residential real estate in Colorado, right? Especially up and down the Front Range and plenty of mountain towns too. But and then I understand, to a lesser degree, but still understand. I understand ag land. So those are the two things I lend on. When somebody calls me and they want a loan on a bowling alley, well, I don't know bowling alleys, so I don't touch those, right? And I
Right.
think a lot of investors, whether they're flippers or lenders or you name it, they get in the most trouble as investors when they're into stuff they don't understand. So I use the KISS model. Keep it simple, right?
Yeah.
Um, so no, I like these a lot. Uh, okay, 209 deals. What's what's the worst thing that's happened? Give me the worst horror story in 209 deals.
Yeah. My whole family knows about the dog lady house. Like, that's what we call it. It was the worst deal of all of them ever. It was a fix and list deal where I renovated the other person's house with my money, and then we listed to sell it. And it's been long enough. The exact numbers I couldn't quote you exactly, but it was a deal where going into it, we all were on the same page that after I do the renovations, we're gonna sell it somewhere around, I think it was like 675, something in that range. And the seller decided, when I'm in the so she had a bunch of dogs. She was running a dog hostel thing out of this house, and so it was trash.
Mhm.
And it was a lot of cosmetic, easy to fix stuff. Right? So we put new flooring, paint, placed some cabinets, trim boards, some doors, and made it look pretty again, and put it on the market. And she decides, after we're done, right before we hit the market, that she thinks it's going to sell for 800, and that she still is the owner, and I have a as her agent, I have a fiduciary responsibility to, do exactly what she wants to do. So
Mhm.
we're on the market at 800, and I'm telling her it's never going to sell at 800, and she just would not drop the price, like,
Ah,
sitting there. And
Yeah.
so there's a 6-month term on the balloon payment. So I'm like, look, I'm gonna have to keep putting on different hats. Like I'm emailing you now as the owner of the LLC that we signed these documents with that says you're gonna sell this house within 6 months for this other price, and we're gonna foreclose on you to get our money back. Right. But at the same time, I'm now also her agent and have a fiduciary responsibility to her. It was hell. Uh, she finally, like after we started the foreclosure process, let me drop the price and the house sold and was over.
Wow.
But that was not fun. That was the worst of all.
I've seen that happen a fair amount when foreclosure is imminent, when it's actually the process has begun. Then people, that lights a fire under their ass and they take care of business. That's pretty common
Yeah.
in these kind of situations. Now, this isn't the most common situation,
But
uh,
could you imagine being the guy that's foreclosing on her and the guy that is her agent selling the house? Like, it was
yeah,
hell. Trying not to cross any lines. And I mean, I was talking to Frascona Joyner almost daily. Like, how do I navigate this?
yeah. No, that is a literal put on this hat. That's agent, take that hat off. But every time you talk to her, put on the actual hat. So
Right.
now I'm the guy that's going to foreclose. Right? You might want to talk to your agent about this. Oh, wait,
Right.
let's give him a call. Okay, so lower the price. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's just so many stories that always pop up if you've been in real estate as long as you have, right? Um,
Mhm.
and especially when you're getting into the flipping process. I mean, that's a ballsy thing to do, um, to flip for somebody else. Um, but you're all papered up, right? But
Yeah.
yeah, therein lies the tricky thing to do, right? Is wear
Yeah.
both hats. So
Well,
uh,
and we're really honest with people too. Like, I think it would go bad if you tried to oversell the value. If like, I'm going to fix this up and it's going to be worth way more than it really will be worth,
mhm.
then people are pissed because you put it on the market and it's not selling. But the business model works when things go as planned, and they almost always go as planned because we're super realistic on the numbers.
Yeah. Do you usually ask them to leave when you're renovating? Do they go? I mean, what's standard procedure there?
Yeah. So 90+% of the time they leave. But
Yeah.
if it depends on what the house needs, like what's the scope of work that's going to bring the ultimate net price to them. And if it's not, if they look like they live pretty clean and the work isn't going to be so much that they couldn't live in it while we're doing it, then we'll let them stay. But otherwise, what we can do is we can build in cash up front. So, like, say it's a I don't know, $40,000 renovation, we just say, all right, it's a $50,000 renovation, and here's 10K, and you can use that to go get a new place to stay while we're selling a house.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a
Yeah,
that's a great way to do it.
yeah,
That's a great way to do it. Um, okay, let me change the subject one last time, and then I'll let
yeah.
you go.
No
So
problem.
I am a believer in work. I like people who work. I like workers, and I think all work is noble. I'm also a real estate professional, and I see huge gaps in the market for people who are willing to work, where they could do very, very well. Um, Here's what I see. Tell me if you agree.
Okay.
I see trades being a huge opportunity right now, and electrical, plumbing. Okay, that everybody knows electrical and plumbing. Those take a while, right? I mean, you have to.
Mm,
Those take years to become a licensed plumber, right? Or to be a legit electrician takes years. Um, I like painters. I like drywalling. And if you really want to be all in, becoming a general contractor, the general contractors are far and few between. And I understand it takes years, right? And I understand you have to pass a test, and I understand you have to work underneath somebody. Um, I think I highly recommend people that want to get in this game that they pick a trade, they pick general contracting, even painting. Alex and I have talked about painters. Um, that's my two cents. Listen, I think there's plenty of real estate agents. There's plenty of lenders.
yep.
There's plenty of wholesalers. Most wholesalers don't make squat. I mean, wholesaling's kind of a joke nowadays.
Yeah.
Um, but you know what? There's not plenty of people to actually do the work. And as a now I'm a private lender and I do lend private money for fix and flips and ag land, but I'm also an agency lender. I lend Fannie and Freddie stuff, FHA, VA, USDA, conventional loans. And I've never met a poor plumber. I've never met a poor electrician. I've never seen them in financial troubles, right? They all do well. Give me your 2 cents. I mean, you're literal boots on the ground. Can the market sustain a bunch of trades coming in?
Yeah, there's a shortage of people that will actually do work, a massive shortage of people that will actually do work. And the market could absorb a lot of additional people actually doing electric work, painting, landscaping, you name it. And it is interesting. I think it's going to be interesting to see how Denver being a sanctuary city, which I don't want to get into the politics of that. But regardless of how you feel about a bunch of illegals coming here to Denver, they're here, and they're a lot of them aren't very skilled, and they're probably not going to go away. So there's an opportunity there through time where I think those people will become, they'll help with painting, they'll help with doing electric work, they'll help with plumbing. So I
Mhm.
think where the opportunity lies is to have your own company as an, your own electric company, your own HVAC company, or your own GC. But you need to have the skills to teach the unskilled people how to work for you
Mhm.
and get the work to capitalize on that. And that I think is the bottleneck where right now there's no people to do work. There eventually will be people to do work if you'll teach them
Yeah.
what, how to do it, but there's not going to be the people that are going to create those jobs. The put it together, take the labor, teach them how to do it, go get the work, make it happen.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
that's a really good point, right? It is one thing to be able to paint a house. It's another thing to be able to, put up a Facebook ad, answer that ad, be polite, bid over the phone
Also,
or
yeah.
go and bid, shake their hands, look them in the eye, look professional, and then do the work and then collect payment, ask for the Google review, right? There's a big
Mhm.
kind of road you go down. No, that's the first time I've heard someone put it that way, where you're going to have to be an educator. I like that. I think that's great. Um,
My my head's in this space because I have a 16-year-old son right now who's a junior in high school. So we spend a lot of time talking about, what's he going to do next? What's the next chapters? And he's right on point with this. He wants to go into the trades, but he is a really good baseball player and he wants to play baseball. Well, the
okay.
problem is all the baseball, the places where there's an opportunity to play baseball, he can get a business degree. And my son's of the mindset of like, well, what am I going to do with that? Like, I don't want to get a college degree. I just want to play baseball. Like, I wish I could just play baseball for like a trade school,
Yeah.
but that's not really a thing out there. But he wants to learn the trade so he can then get into real estate. So exactly what you're talking about is kind of where my son is headed right now.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that's a good point. I say this story all the time. I mean, my HVAC company that I've hired to replace HVAC stuff in my apartment buildings. I mean, I've put their kids through college. I've spent so much money
Right.
on air conditioning in Pueblo, Colorado. That guy, and I know that guy. I know the owner of that company personally. I know his children. I know they went to CSU, and I think I paid for
Pure
them to
Air
get.
Solutions, maybe?
No,
No? All right, yeah,
Arbuck.
sorry, go on.
Shout out to Arbuck, is amazing company, right?
Right,
Um, but anyway, I agree. That's a good point because no trade schools have
the sports,
have the
yeah,
sports.
yeah,
A degree in business is fine, right? A degree in I don't think much of degrees now, personally. I think if you want to do something, go do it, right? Um,
mhm,
So,
yep,
I mean, of course, if you wanna be an engineer or a doctor, yeah, go get the degree. But if you wanna do a business, you don't need a business degree, you need to do business, and there's so much free content out there to get good at business.
yeah,
Um, ¿Habla español?
no,
No habla
I've
español.
tried. I've spent hours and hours trying, but lots of Rosetta Stone. But no, I couldn't ever quite pick it up.
So to aprender un poquito español, vivas en Costa Rica para 2 o 3 meses. Live in Costa Rica for 2 or 3 months.
Yeah.
Only speak Spanish, and that's how you do it. The Rosetta Stone and these things, I don't think they help that much. You just got to go there and get in it, and not, don't go with your buddies. Go alone.
Right.
Come back, and you can articulate. I always say, mi punto es claro, pero mi gramática es pobre. My point is clear, but my grammar is really bad. But that would be a hell of a skill set to speak Spanish, to be able to train people and give them skills so they can make money, and then finding the right people that will stick around and that you can improve their lives through employment, right? That they might start as the painter and they might evolve into the drywall guy and the painter. They might, the sky's the limit for people willing to work. It's just a different culture right now. I mean, I grew up mowing lawns. I started a lawn mowing company in 4th grade. By 5th grade, I was making $100 a day. And all I would do would just push that lawnmower and think of other ways to make money, right? That's all I would do. And I didn't have any skills. So it was pulling weeds. And you know how many kids have knocked on my door and asked if they could mow my lawn?
Maybe my son. I don't know.
Maybe. I mean, zero.
Yeah, zero. Yeah.
I mean, when I was growing, I had to get in physical fights with another kid in the neighborhood who was mowing. He was ripping down my flyers. I was ripping down his flyers. It can't, it was going to come to a head, and it did. Anyway.
Yeah.
So I'm with you, man. I think there's a huge gap in the trades. People talk about it all the time, and yet it's not being filled.
No.
So if you want to make some money, I mean, you can make a good living. You can make enough money to buy a house, live in it, do a house hack. Then you have a rental. I mean, you could build a real life, a real good life, just as a handyman or a painter, or even one of these non-skilled. You don't have to have a certification to hang drywall, do you?
No.
I mean,
GCs normally self-perform it.
Yeah.
There are drywall companies, but it's not a license.
Right.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot more opportunity to make a lot more money with if you went to a trade school and then aspire to create your own business and hire the people that you met when you were in trade school, learning the skill sets. Then I think you have a way higher chance of making a lot more money doing that than you do going to college and getting about any degree.
Right. Totally agree. I mean, the plumber's not going to be outsourced to China. The AI is not going to replace the plumber.
No.
AI is not going to show up to your flip and clean out a hoarder house, right?
No.
So anyway, off on that tangent. Yeah. All right, my friend. Last thing, I like to finish these shows with a little gratitude. What are you grateful for?
I think I'm most grateful for my family. I have an amazing wife and 3 kids, and everyone's healthy. Yeah, that's got to top everything else.
I'm with you. So I'll second that motion. I've got a wonderful family, 2 kids, and they're a little younger than yours. To complete our full circle here, I took my kids to teach them how to start a business, and we started a shoveling business. So we did a flyer. We walked around. I didn't do any of this. I just walked with them, and they knocked on doors. They handed flyers, and we saw how much we could make in one loop around the neighborhood. And I think we came home with $170, and that's with 2 boys shoveling. And the last house we hit, it was our friend's house, their friend's house, and they were scared to go up and knock on the door. They're like, "Oh, they're not home," blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, well, you miss every shot you don't take. Just go knock on that door. Just do it. And they knocked on that door, and that guy hired my sons to shovel and hooked them up with a $20 tip. It was their biggest payday, and it was this great learning experience of just try, get the work, do it, come home. And they had cash when they came home. So I'm grateful for that. That was a proud dad moment that this winter provided. So
That's
Yeah,
cool.
man, it's like that, and I'm grateful for you coming on and doing this with me. It's
Yeah.
good to talk to you and learn, what you're doing, and yeah, man, I appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, we'll do it again. See ya.
See ya.